We're live. Chase, BYU falls to Cincinnati on the road. They are now 500 in conference play. Cincinnati just flat out whooped BYU in the second half. That's just what it was. Initial reactions from this game.
First off, bummed out because we didn't get to actually go live like we promised. Only if BYU won. So that would have been fun, but it also would have been fun if they'd won. Initial reactions, I mean, the past two games for BYU, they've seen like dang near historic shooting performances from some of these teams and these guys. Also, the past three games, you include that Baylor one, right, where they were able to actually keep up and win. But just an insane shooting night from Cincy and BYU. We talked about this road trip, how tough it was going to be. You and I were very cautious about this game and going into it. Picking BYU, of course, we still did. But I think this is about as bad as it gets. But with that being said, it's not the end of the world and it's not awful, if that makes sense.
I 100% agree. Like, I don't think the season's over by any means. I don't think this team can't make it to March Madness. I think if the tournament started today, they'd be the last team in Dayton still. So they still very much control their own destiny. They don't have to look on the outside, hope other teams lose around them. No, they have tons of chances to win these games. And look, this is a win. This is a game you wanted to win. You not necessarily needed to. I think in this road stretch right here going Cincy, West Virginia, I think you do need to go 1-1 in this spot. That is huge. You need to build off some road wins, and West Virginia slipping a little bit lately. Those are chances to end up getting those road wins. But today, you know what, man? Look, Cincy was just hitting. It was just flat out what happened in Provo with BYU, what they did to Cincinnati. Cincinnati just did it right back to BYU in Ohio tonight. And that's really what it was, man. I mean, Cincinnati, they shoot 31% from three. They shot 50% tonight. Jizzle James, he is a 25% three-point shooter. He shot 6 of 8 from three. Look, that happens, you chalk it up to the game. That's what happened last time. Yegor Demon, 28% three-point shooter. He shot 60% last time these two teams faced off. So, look, that's what happens. You split the series between Cincinnati and BYU. It's not the end of the world.
Not the end of the world. And let's keep in mind, this was a quad one game too. So this isn't a bad loss. It's not, your resume hasn't taken a hit at all. In fact, like, if this means anything, not that it means much, you weren't supposed to win, according to Vegas and most of the analytics out there. So it would have been nice to get a win. And would you feel a lot better about BYU? Yeah, sure. But is it the end of the world? No, you can't panic right now. And we'll see the response from BYU fans. But, this team isn't, they have to get their heads right and talk about West Virginia and get ready for that as they have this extended road trip on Tuesday. But we'll talk about that later. And of course, in our preview on Monday. But tonight, man, Cincinnati was just cooking. Like, it was, you could tell the crowd was into it. I think it was a sellout. Saturday, they were just on fire. They were smoking, dude. Here's what I'll say about this. Like I said, the past, 3 or so games for BYU, these teams have shot like crazy, crazy well. At some point, you do need to look at your three-point defense, right? And you still need to start to evaluate, okay, what are we doing that's allowing these guys to shoot well? Some of these shots, granted, like Caleb Love and VJ Edgecombe, who are just elite college basketball players, those guys are shot makers and they're hitting them. Today was the first real, like, okay, BYU is getting a little lax on the three-point line. Cincinnati is hitting them at a higher rate, but they're also getting pretty good looks. And so, with the shooting performances that have gone on the past couple of weeks, I think BYU does need to take a quick look at their defense, especially in the perimeter, and start to figure out how they're going to challenge these guys. Because the bottom line is, look, this was an anomaly, but it's happened a few times in a row. And if it keeps happening, it's going to be tough to win games. Because when the guys are shooting like this on their home floor, you're in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you give up, if another team shoots 50% from three, there's a great chance you're going to lose that game. They shot 58% from the field. You're probably losing that game. Look, at some points, was it BYU's defense that was at fault there? Yeah, but also, since he was hitting tough shot after tough shot tonight, it felt like. It doesn't matter if a lot of the times if it was in their face or it was from NBA range, they were knocking them down left and right. I'm really not that concerned about this BYU team as a tournament team going forward. I do want to point this out tonight, too. I was a little disappointed, and, Yegor, this is a game I thought Yegor, okay, come in, dictate the tempo, really, really figure out things against a physical team, show you can do this like he did last time against them. Wes Miller watched some tape and said, he went straight to that Houston game and said, what did they do to him? All right, we're doing that to Yegor Demon tonight. And they got physical, they got up in his grill, and they got him out of his mojo tonight because he was struggling. Honestly, the best part of this game tonight was that weird stretch with Trey Stewart, Boscovich, Dallin Hall, Cannon Catchings, and I can't remember. Was it Mawit Mag that was in at that time?
I believe so, yeah.
Dawson. Yeah, like that lineup put together a nice little stretch there, but even then, look, since he wasn't missing, at halftime, I was actually feeling pretty good about BYU. You hit that three going into the half. You go, all right, BYU, here we go, man. And Cincinnati was hitting lights out, and BYU was still winning in this game. Since he just came out and punched BYU in the throat to start the second half, that start of the second half was the difference in this game. Flat out, that's all it was.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk about the middle eight a lot in football. The middle, however many minutes you want to call it, probably the middle eight too in basketball is huge. And BYU won that first half, and especially there in the closing minutes. Cincinnati was just more physical. We've talked about this time and time again with this BYU team. You need to come out with a bit of fire, a bit of attitude, right? Especially if you're going to be playing on the road in front of a big crowd. You need to bring an edge and match the physicality and match the energy if you're going to keep up. And I don't want to say they didn't bring it because I don't know. I don't know what's the locker room or the vibe, but Cincy certainly did, right? To another level. And if BYU didn't match it, and then all of a sudden the game just got away, all of a sudden out of reach, till eventually, BYU finally makes that little run and you're like, okay, down 8, can they do something here? Then Cincy just puts it away, right? With more elite shooting, right? And it's a pretty good defense on their part. We didn't even give props to Cincinnati. Honestly, like they, you play good, right? They deserve to win, but it's about the energy. It's about matching that, especially when you're on the road. And so BYU didn't have that in the second half coming out. And that's arguably the most important time to have it, right? Is coming out of the locker room and getting back on the court.
Yep. And Cincinnati, I tweeted this out as well earlier. Cincinnati looked a little step quicker, a little step hungrier, and they were definitely more desperate in this game because they needed this game more than BYU did. Every game here on out for Cincy is basically a must-win. Wes Miller coaching for his life right now, and you could feel that on the court with the way Cincy brought that energy in this game. Like, once again, it does help when you're knocking down threes, but that all compounds on each other when you are desperate and you are hungry for that. And in the first half, I thought that really showed, and then the start of the second half, man, BYU was just got put in a blender in that run.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to. There's no one to point out individually, but a lot of guys just looked uncomfortable. It looked like this wasn't the moment. And look, long road trip, things are weird. It's whatever.
Chase,
right? This is the thing. Go ahead.
I was going to ask real quick, kind of off topic, but does this East Coast road trip have a little PTSD vibes of Oklahoma last year? Going to Oklahoma State and Oklahoma?
It probably does. I mean, it certainly feels like that for us, right? Mm-hmm. We were feeling a lot better about that team back then.
That team was already a shoo-in at that point.
Yeah, they were ranked heading into that Oklahoma State game, if I recall correctly. So this is a little bit different, but it is. And look, you have a chance here after, going off of a 4-game win streak to all of a sudden drop 3 in a row and be kind of right back where you were. I mean, we're going to have some uncomfortable conversations if come Tuesday they don't get to take care of business. I'm not going to get ahead of myself. It does feel like that. And we talked about it in the preview. It's tough to do this, dude, to go on the road multiple days, change time zones twice. The thing about college basketball, though, that I think most people who've watched this realize is like sometimes you just lose games. You lose silly ones, right? Iowa State gets smoked by Kansas State. Kansas loses to Kansas State today, and we'll talk about Kansas State a little bit later and what that game's going to look like for BYU. But sometimes you just drop ones. I mean, Duke right now, they're hanging close with Clemson. It just happens. It's different nights. I don't know if I want to certainly say tonight like it was just a fluke because Cincinnati is a legit talented team. Wes Miller's a great coach. I don't want to take anything away from them. But you need to realize if you're a BYU fan, sometimes you just lose games. This is the situation where teams go and lose, right? To a hungry, desperate team on the road on a Saturday sellout crowd. That's a tough place to win.
And this is the roller coaster that is playing Power 4, Power 5 conference basketball is. Look, you saw it last year. Last year was even crazier. It'd be 1-1, 1-1, 1-1, 1-1. Now it's okay, 2-3 in a row. Okay, 0-2, 2-3 in a row, 0-2. That's just how this is going right now in the Big 12. And that's just how it is for most teams in Power 5 basketball because it's that tough right now. But from this game, what do you take away from it, looking at it from the basketball side? What's the one positive you think you can take away?
Though I think the biggest positive for me is continuing to see kind of the depth of the team. I don't think that like all of a sudden there's this big revelation with the Trey Stewart, Boscovich minutes. Maybe there is something in there and Kevin Young liked, and I could eat my words. But more so just that you can rely on these guys to come in during these situations, right? The Foose minutes weren't working. Let's try Boscovich, go on a little bit of run, right? Dawson Baker, who in the first half was doing a lot for BYU and initially got them back into it at the very beginning and led them in that second half. So I think you're feeling pretty good about the depth you have, the bench, their ability to come in and play comfortably. And you still feel pretty good about your offense because, to be fair, BYU didn't shoot very well tonight, right? And I think that they still got a lot of looks that they wanted. Of course, they fell apart there towards the end. It's the biggest. You asked for positives, so I won't even. The defense needs help, but for positive, that's what I see.
Yeah, I think the positive here is you saw a little something playing Boscovich at the 5. I think that's another wrinkle you can throw in there where, look, maybe it's not necessarily going to happen game to game where he comes in and completely takes over Foose's minutes, but night to night where you see, okay, hey, here's a little mismatch if we go 5 out real quick. That's another wrinkle that I think BYU fans have actually wanted this season and wondered why he hasn't been in more. But to this point, it's worked to a decent degree, so I guess there's not too much to complain about there. And, yeah, I think the offense, I think it's okay, it's fine. The biggest problem here tonight is people are going to pinpoint to the offense and go, oh, they didn't shoot that well, they didn't have that great of a night, everything looked a little more difficult. It's because the defense was struggling so much to get stops. It all, like I keep saying, it all compounds on each other because, look, when BYU wants to get up tempo in this kind of game where Cincy mucks it up, and BYU, when you get stops, you can push the tempo. But when Cincy makes a shot, they can get into their half-court defense and then start getting under Yegor Demon, getting his grill a little bit. And then all of a sudden, you're in this slow, muck-it-up game that Cincy wants, and that's what Cincy did today. They got it. They played the exact game they wanted to. And on top of that, they nailed a ton of shots to just help themselves. So I think that's basically about it on this one. Do we want to go to a quick break and answer some Twitter questions?
Let's do it. I have a really crazy stat for you, and I'll tell you right after the break.
Chase, what's that stat you want to tell me?
Okay, do you want to guess how many rebounds total BYU's entire team had today?
I have not looked at this number yet, so I don't know, 25.
17, Carter.
Ugh.
They only had 17 rebounds. I think, one, you got out-rebounded, obviously. Two, it talks to how good of shooting night Cincinnati had. Like, there's not even barely any rebounds to be had. More than half 60% of their shots that they took went in the basket. So, just thought that was a wild. I was like looking over our notes here, and I was like, that's crazy. 17 for an entire game for the entire team.
17's crazy. Like you just said, it just shows how many shots they nailed in this game. But anyhow, let's answer some Twitter questions. What do you got?
Let's do it. All right. As always, thanks for commenting, guys. We really, really appreciate it and love it. I'm not going to read that first comment. Let's go with Clark at Clarkster Stu as a regular. Shout out, Clark. Needed this one. Afraid our tourney chances are starting to slip away, and we still haven't had that marquee win, in my opinion. You know it's bad when a 25% three-point shooter named Jizzle is hitting 6 threes against you.
A lot of people hating on the name Jizzle. Chase, would you name your kid Jizzle?
If BYU wins the Natty this year, I'll name my firstborn, boy or girl, Jizzle. I will.
All right.
It's recorded.
Yeah, people are going to listen to this, and they're going to hold you to it.
But other than that, no, I would not name my kid Jizzle.
Yeah, no. The tourney chances it's a coin flip right now. It's heads or tails. Or is BYU going to make it? It's a 50-50 shot right now. They got to knock off some quad one wins right now. They were in a great position before, and they had a real chance. They had to go 1-1 in this Arizona-Cincy stretch to really push themselves over the top right now, and they didn't do themselves any favors right now. And now all of a sudden, some people are going to have you out, some people are going to have you in. It's going to be about 50%. You got to win at West Virginia. I'm not going to say it's a must-win, but confidence-wise and the feeling going forward, it is a much-needed win.
Yeah, BYU's sitting like on the fence right now. I think Lenardi said, like during the broadcast, Lenardi had like an update where he's like, if BYU loses, they will be the very last team in my bracket. And that's before everyone else, the right nights of the game. So that could still change. BYU is just right here on the fence, perfectly level. If they can beat West Virginia, you're all of a sudden back in. You're doing just fine. If you lose to West Virginia, you're out. And you need to make up some ground here. Again, it's not a must win. It's not your whole season, but it's a big game Tuesday night.
And then you look ahead towards Saturday. That's another trap spot at the Marriott Center because Kansas State right now, they figured it out. They're kind of rolling right now. They just took care of Kansas today. And now, luckily, that's turned into a quad 2 game, so it's not this terrible, terrible loss if you ended up losing. But that's not a game to look ahead past. Kansas State's coming in there. Hey, we've taken down some of these top teams right now. Iowa State, Kansas. We can go in and beat BYU. We keep winning. This is the Big-12. We can play ourselves back into the tournament if we just keep racking off big, big wins like this. So that's something to look forward to with their tourney chances as well. Let's move on. At the GOAT, Jack_Carpenter 5. Jack Carpenter, bro, we really let Rafa Leao, soccer player, by the way, for people listening, his doppelganger cook us. It's games like this where I don't understand why Boscovich doesn't get in earlier. Why not go Hall, Saunders, Catchings, Foose, Boscovich instead of Baker? Thoughts? So the Boscovich getting in earlier stuff is, I don't know, man. I'm not in the building. He hasn't played in so many games where I wonder if it was a thing where maybe they just didn't feel like they could trust him in these big moments. And they got to a point where they were just so desperate that they're looking for any ideas.
Yeah, I think you're right. It was certainly at that point in the game where you're like, let's just try something new, right? And so that explains a lot. Look, you have centers, 2 good centers that you believe in, right? And that is in, Foose Traore and Keba Keita. So playing Boscovich doesn't make a whole lot of sense for what you're trying to run. Remember, BYU's trying to run 4 out, 1 in, high pick and roll. That is the game plan on offense. And Boscovich doesn't fit that archetype because he is not a true, he's not a post player big. Mm-hmm. He's a stretch 5. But from what we saw and the way that BYU, can open the floor with him, this could be a thing, right? Maybe that's a positive they take away. Maybe they start looking at the Boscovich minutes more. I don't know why we haven't seen it before. I mean, I can't remember the last time he even got into a game, Carter.
That wasn't like a 30-point blowout.
Right, exactly. So, but maybe things change tonight. Maybe after tonight. That's what they needed to see.
I really thought coming into this year he'd almost play somewhat of that Noah Waterman role, and he just really hasn't played a role at all much this season, especially in conference play, except for today. But credit to him. I thought he played really well today in his limited minutes, so shout out Boscovich. Let's move on. We got Riles Mooserton at Moose. Out-rebounded 32-17, leading rebounder for the night. Keba, Foose, and Baker with 3. That's a disgusting display of effort. When shots aren't falling, you can't let your effort fall too. I think that goes back a little bit to our point where we talked about, okay, look, Cincy was a little more desperate, a little more hungry tonight. But on the flip side of that, it's also Cincy was just knocking down a ton of shots. So there's not as many rebounds to grab either. So it's a mix of those two things. But I wouldn't say it's a disgusting effort. But look, the start of the second half was unacceptable, and every player and coach would say the same thing.
Yeah, I agree. My big belief about rebounds, it's kind of like a second degree, not at an exact correlation, but like a second degree hustle stat or like an effort stat, because rebounds, a lot of the time, 50% of the time, I'd say rebounds are just who wants it more, who's going to go in and give that effort. And look,
Yep.
17 rebounds. I don't care how well the team shot. It's still very bad. BYU was always going to get out rebounded. Typically, the team that shoots, worse is going to get less rebounds. But in this case, 17 is bad. It is like the lowest I've ever seen in a college game. Of course, there's been more, but it's super bad. And I think rebounds are a bit of a hustle stat, and they do show that. So to talk about that fire, Moose, it's a great point. He kept going, Carter. He said a recurring theme this season is that guys have career nights against BYU. It's an uncanny ability the Cougs have. My question is why? Moose, I don't really know. Can't quite explain it, other than I do think the 3-point defense has been a little off. But this has happened the past, like 5 or 6 times. It almost feels like for BYU.
Yeah, I think another thing too. We might need to cut this out, but I think another thing too. You look across you're warming up and you look across the court and you go, 6'3" white guy's gonna guard me. All right, and you're feeling confident going into that game. Like naturally, you're going to feel more confident. You're like, oh, Mormon white boy's gonna stop me. No, of course. Like, and also, I think it's a blend of also the defense and everything like that. But it's just how it is. This is college basketball, man. This is what happens when you're not playing in the WCC sometimes.
I agree. I don't think we need to cut that because I think that's a good point.
All right.
That's a good point.
All right.
Let's go to our next one. Latter-day Cougar at BYU guy 32. He asked a compelling question. I mean, this is hard hitting, Carter. He just,
all right, I'm ready.
Simply, he just says, "Do we deserve to be in the tourney?" That's all. That's his entire comment. Very profound. Latter-day Cougar.
Well, so it's interesting because if you're a BYU fan, you've been so engaged with it. I feel like, especially after a night like tonight, you're just so disappointed in what you saw. And so you go, this team doesn't deserve to be in the tournament and all this stuff. But then you remember the fact that look at the other teams around your area and go, oh, but that team also doesn't deserve to be in. Oh, they don't deserve to be in. UCF is in that same range. Does UCF all of a sudden belong to be in? Well, BYU beat them at their home court, so BYU should be in over them. You look at like the North Carolina Tar Heels. Well, they're like 15-10 right now in the worst Power 5 conference in basketball right now. So, yeah, I understand the question. It's from a fan perspective and what you watch. You've been disappointed this season. You go, these guys don't have it. They don't deserve it. But according to the resume, according to what they won, they probably do deserve to be the last team in at this moment. We'll see going forward.
Yeah, it's a great question. And like we've talked about, it's very close. Resumes say, if you want to just take a look internally, inside yourself, be like, in my heart, does BYU deserve to be in the NCAA tournament? I think my answer is yes. I know there's been some ugly moments, but there's also been some great ones. And I think we see the talent and we see the good moments, and we're like, yes, this is a tournament team. Like, and they can do things in the tournament. There's ugly moments, but they all have them. Now they've been a little bit more off, and they've led to some losses that they shouldn't have had. But yep. I think in my heart of hearts, this is a team that should be dancing. And if they don't, then that's a disappointment. And that's on, a few losses you shouldn't have had. So, I think also a good way to look at this, Carter, if BYU went and play, let's say they get an 11 seed, they don't even have to play first 4. Do you have any confidence in them, like, winning that game?
In the first 4 in Dayton?
No. Let's say they don't have to even play that. They just get in at large, 11 seed against a 6 seed. Do you feel confident that they compete and win that game?
Oh, yeah.
That's my point. So if you feel like they can go and win one, then yeah, I think they deserve to be in.
Yeah, you're looking at a team like Oregon you would be going against. BYU can beat Oregon. Absolutely. I don't think that. Yeah, I
think that's a good litmus test.
And the other thing is star power. BYU has a little bit of star power that some of these other teams flat out just don't. But great question. Let's move on. We got Chris Brockman at Brockman Chris. Winning on the road is very hard. To regroup and finish the road trip 1-1, and we are still on track for the NCAA tournament. 8 games left. Win 5, and you're in. Boom. Nailed it. Don't need to add anything else. Let's move on to the next question.
Well done, Chris.
Doug Dillard at Dillard_Doug. Shout out Dillards. This is a bad loss. One thing to lose by 7 one one thing to lose by 7, another by 20. Since he figured out how to lock down Yegor, and he looked awful in the second half. Bosco needs more minutes until Foose can get his act together and figure it out. Foose has struggled a little bit in the Big 12 this season. There's no doubt about that. And maybe Foose, Boscovich, maybe those become interchangeable pieces, and that's another wrinkle to BYU going forward. And then with Yegor in the second half, that's what I was saying. Wes Miller watched the Houston, watched the Providence tape and go, all right, that's exactly what we need to do. Don't go under screens. Just put a lot of contact on them. And if they call the foul, they call the foul. Otherwise, if they're not going to call them and they're going to let us play a little looser this game, that's a recipe for disaster sometimes.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think it's well said, and I think it's fair takes, Doug. And maybe BYU experienced some different things here with Boscovich in this lineup. Maybe this was the eye opener for them. Let's go with Alex Beach at ABeach319. Can't expect to win when losing the rebound margin by 15. Always a great point. We did talk about that. What's the reason that KY didn't call a timeout early in the second half to try and stop the momentum?
It's a great question.
Honestly, a good question. And, something that Tommy Lloyd talked about after
did
the
he
Arizona
see that
game.
Tommy Lloyd clip in the press conference?
Maybe he did. Well, he's like, you never want to be the one to do it. He just says it almost feels like surrendering. And he says the best response is a bucket, right? Is to go get one. That's the best way to stop momentum.
Yeah, that's like saying the best way to avoid harmful substances is to not do harmful substances. Like I remember when in the press conference, I was like, yeah, the best way to stop a run is to get a bucket. I'm like, that's great. The other thing about Tommy Lloyd's philosophy on that is it's really easy when you have a guy who's played 4 or 5 years in college basketball and has played in the biggest moments in college basketball. Kevin Young and these guys don't necessarily. I mean, Yegor Demon's 18 years old. He hasn't played in massive, massive moments in college basketball yet. And so when you have a younger team and younger guys running the show a little bit, time out, man. Time out. Like, you got to use that thing. But, look, would it have mattered, honestly, in the end? I don't know. Since he was hitting.
They were hitting. And it's up to each coach's philosophy. And, if we ever can get in front of Kevin Young, we'll ask him that question. I almost kind of see it like in a football game, if you're down 12 and there's like 8 minutes left, like, are you going for it on 4th and 4, or are you just going to punt and trust your defense kind of deal? It's like there's a, it just depends on your philosophy. Are you Dan Campbell and you're like uber aggressive and you're like, let's just play through this, right? And let's just see if we can go. Or are you like, let's play it safe. Let's play the analytics game. Let's call a timeout, stop this run. So to each his own. Also, as a coach, man, it's hard to time it. It's hard because what if, I don't know, what if Dallin Hall's got an FU3 in the chamber, that would stop it.
I will say, like, one thing that did kind of shift the momentum a little bit in this game, especially in the first half, was Wes Miller made a great timeout with 17 minutes left in the first half. When BYU started rolling, he was quick with that trigger, just bam, timeout. And momentum shifted immediately after that. Cincinnati all of a sudden went up 12-11 at the under 16 timeout. I mean, they turned around that game in less than a minute, basically. And so I'm usually in favor of calling a timeout unless you have an experienced team that you've been through battles with, where Roy Williams is famous for not using timeouts in those moments. But Roy Williams typically had a guy like Ty Lawson and Tyler Hansborough in the 2009 Tar Heels on their roster. It's a little easier to say, hey, you guys are experienced. Go figure it out. Figure it out on your own. When you have a team that hasn't been together and doesn't have that chemistry quite yet, I think you burn a timeout.
I agree. And not to belabor this point, this is the last thing I'll say. Look at the Baylor game. Scott Drew, he took a timeout to stop the momentum once. After that, he stopped doing it, and guess what? VJ Edgecombe answered, and it was massive. Yeah. But you have a guy like VJ Edgecombe, right? You have, to your point, you have that guy, that cat on your team, can do stuff. Let's keep going here, Carter. We've got a lot of comments today. Appreciate you guys. Let's go for BYU for the W at BYU Insider. Recruiting will be a little tougher when KY is selling the vision of making the NIT with multiple lottery picks and seasoned vets. I could tell this is an angry comment. Not at us, of course, but you're just feeling emotional. And I get that, dude. Like, there's a point in the game where I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, BYU sucks. They suck. And you're like, okay, it's fair, right? If you make the NIT with this team, we're not going to sugarcoat it. It's a disappointment.
If someone saw the text between Chase and I during these games, I think we've said this is over probably about 700 times. 650 of those were probably right there.
It's true. We do know this team. But I will say this, BYU for the W. You're right in like if this team makes the NIT, it's a disappointment. You can't sugarcoat it and you can't dance your way around it. This would be a disappointing season if you don't make the NCAA tournament. So in a way, he's got a point.
100%.
I don't know if he's going to reflect recruiting like you may. I don't think people need to recruiting. Right. First off, it's set for next season. You've recruited who you need to recruit, other than the transfers. Right. So I wouldn't worry too much about recruiting for next season. If next season turns out to be an NIT team, then we can have that conversation.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think a 1-year thing, especially in a first-year job, I don't think it necessarily affects recruiting too much, but let's say you're going to the NIT 3-4 years in a row, that's a problem. That's when it becomes an issue, and that remains to be seen. We'll find out. Great question, though. Let's go to our guy, Nathaniel Milligan, at Nathaniel_Millie. Hot takes this time. This one was lost by KY. Credit to Cincy for playing well, but they were better prepared. I agree and I disagree with that one. I agree that I do think they were a little better prepared, and I especially think it was them hunting Yegor and getting physical with him, which threw him off this game, and then they were able to dictate the tempo. I don't necessarily know if it was lost by Kevin Young, though, because Jizzle James shoots 6 for 8 against you. You live with that.
You do. It's hard to put say like this game was lost by one person. I know that's not what our guy Nathan means. Like it's all his fault, but you do want to try and pinpoint the loss. And look, since he was very well prepared, we talked about in the preview, like they're going to have a completely different game plan here for BYU than what they had heading in. And was BYU ill prepared? I don't know. They won the first half, right? So how prepared that for 20 minutes they were playing pretty good. It was the second half. So was that on KY? I don't know. It's hard to say. I think it's more of an energy thing, and we talked about that.
Yeah, and maybe it's something with the travel, or I don't know what's going on. But the other thing he said is the Trey Mihailo lineup worked because of their energy, and it wasn't one of Cincy's carefully drawn-up defensive plans. If we can't improve our rebounding, we won't win one game in March. The rebounding stuff, you got to be able to rebound in March. That's huge. But also, I think that's a great point with the Trey Mihailo minutes where Cincy didn't have a game plan going against those guys. They're like, we've never seen these guys on tape. We didn't study them. We didn't think they played at all because they don't. And they also Trey and Mihailo brought some real energy in this game, and that's what ended up bringing them back. Eventually, there wasn't enough gas in the tank, and it happens. But I think Nathaniel made some great points.
As always he does. I agree with you 100%. Let's go with Dane, our guy Dane at the Nude Son.
Shout out.
What concerns you most about the next game? What makes you most hopeful for the next game? Back-to-back road games is not something we've experienced a ton. You're right, Dane. And we talked about this literally in like the season preview. We pointed to this road trip and how tough it would be. What concerns you most about next game? Coming out flat, right? Staying in a hotel for the next few nights. You're just coming off of you're getting smoked by 20 and you're like, I'm just not feeling it right now, man. And it can happen, right? What makes me hopeful though, is I think these guys really like each other. First off, I think they're actually like a tight knit group. They have experienced dudes and guys like Richie, Dallin, Trevin, who have done back-to-back road trips, who have won big games in big arenas against good teams, right? And so what makes me hopeful is like these guys can get focused. BYU is typically pretty good after losses, right? I think they're going to be staying in the same hotel. They're going to be meeting a lot, practicing a lot together. And so my hope is that they can get their heads right and they can figure it out and come out hungry and understand the magnitude of Tuesday's game.
Yeah, what makes me hopeful for next game is the fact that during that rough stretch after the Utah game, this team didn't check out. And I've talked about this before on the podcast where in the NIL era, when you're going through a lot of struggles, it's very easy to just go, you know what? I'm already getting my check right now. I don't really care about winning. Like, this season's a wash, whatever. And Kevin Young and this coaching staff and these guys together we're all still bought in, even though they were going through that stretch. So therefore, I think they can really bounce back. If they bounce back from where they were, Chase, I think bouncing back from a little 2-game skid against good teams right now is not a problem. I think they can do it Tuesday night against West Virginia. Once again, a great chance to get a big quad 1 win on the road.
Huge. It really is a turning point. I think at this point in the season, it's a tipping point is better with my analogy earlier, my little object lesson with my hands. If you're just listening on audio,
yeah, and concerns for this game, rebounding and shot making in a tough environment, winning on the road, very simple stuff here. And look, free throw shooting and getting to the line. They were not getting to the line enough today and penetrating enough. So, and they got stuck in a game like that where it was tough. But anyhow, let's move on. Do you want to read at Ty Alder 97's comment?
Yeah, if I can find it here real quick. Got a lot of you guys.
I think it was the first comment.
Oh, no, I don't want to. I'm not going to read that.
How can we stop getting Jizzle James to play a very good game like this? Jizzle James like players to get this every road game. Not going to read the actual tweet, but basically, how does BYU stop career games happening on the road? Play better defense. It's
really, yeah. I've said this 17 times. You guys are probably sick of this. It's a mentality, dude. It's especially on the road. Like there's guys who rise to the occasion and there's guys who kind of fall. I don't think BYU's got guys that fall. That's not what I'm saying. I just think they've lacked a little bit of like we're coming into your house and we're actually gonna beat you guys. Like I think they had against UCF, right? When there's that moment where UCF looked like they might steal it, and BYU's like, wait a second, no, I don't care I don't care if we're Orlando, Florida. Like we're gonna freaking win this game, and they rallied together to do that. That's what it was, and that's the energy and the mentality you need. So.
And I think we saw the energy in the Trey Mihailo minutes, but it was just too little too late, and the lead was too big at that point. And, yeah, that's what it was. Do we have any other comments that we didn't read?
Let's see here. I think we do have just a couple more. We got our guy E-Dub. Can't forget about.
Yeah. Read
good old E-Dub. If I could find it, I know he said something. Yeah, he said.
I have it right. Okay.
At E_win24, since he didn't forget that matchup in Provo 2 weeks ago, came out aggressive in the second half and didn't look back. Got to bury the tape and move on to the more important game of this 2-game stretch against West Virginia. Also, very well said, E-Dub. Also, how many guards have popped off against BYU this year? There's a theme in this comment section. It's true, and like we kind of said, like when it comes to defending guards, BYU doesn't have the personnel super equipped to do that. Did I say that tame enough? Like, if you all know what I'm saying, like it's just look on ball defense.
Have you thought about
tough athletic guards?
Have you thought about running for office, doing a little politics?
Yeah, a PR trained.
Yeah, you're getting PR trained out here.
Yeah, well, everyone knows what I'm saying. Like, it's just they're just not well equipped to defend elite guards. All right, man to man. That's how it is. So
flat out.
Guards are going to play well against BYU.
Yeah. 100%. And also 100% agree with the first part of your comment, E-Dub. So shout out. And then did we read Peter's?
No, that's the last one.
Okay. Peter Van Leeuwen, I hope I said your name right. Cincinnati made shots they never have in their life. I was told the last game that the rebounds weren't why BYU lost, and that may be true, but this is the second game in a row they lost the rebound margin by double digits and lost by double digits. Still loving this team, though. Great attitude, and also, you're correct. Cincy has never shot like this in their lives, especially this season. And on top of that, rebounding does have to change, and the rebounding margin is huge. But once we said before, if you're not getting stops, those rebounds are flat out not there.
It's true. But he does have a point. BYU's got to rebound better. I mean, they
got to rebound better.
They got to rebound
Everybody
better.
on that coaching staff is saying the exact same thing we are right now. We weren't at the press conference. I can guarantee you Kevin Young mentioned something that, hey, we need to rebound better.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Thanks for all the comments, guys. Appreciate it.
Shout out to all the listeners.
Yeah, I know it was a rough loss, but hopefully you can find solace in some of our words. Maybe some of you are like, what the F are these guys talking about? Shut up. But We
Yeah,
appreciate
probably, but that happens. Anyhow, we will be back on Monday with a West Virginia preview show that'll hopefully be out early Monday. So stay tuned for that. Hit that subscribe button. Church Ball Podcast on all platforms. Field of 68 Podcast Network on YouTube, at Church Ball Pod on all social media, at Chase_Rogers0, at Karter_B8. If you're an NBA fan, check out, we did an NBA trade deadline episode on CarterCast. Go check that out on Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, wherever you listen to stuff. Go check it out. It's on there. Thank you so much for listening. Chase, anything else before we wrap up?
Nope. Let's go Cougs. Rally Tuesday.